Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Post in Black. I'm your host, David Hunter Jr., and we celebrate Black excellence behind the lens. We have a very special episode for you. We are here in Washington, D.C. at Nat Geo with Adam Lingo. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Oh, it is amazing. It's so happy to have you here. And as you may know, when we host our interviews, we always start off with an icebreaker. We want the people to get to know you, to hear a little bit about you. And before we dive in, are you ready for that?
I think so.
You think so? All right. Our icebreaker for you is if you could add one face to the Mount Rushmore, what face would you add?
First name to pop in my head is Harriet Tubman.
Harriet Tubman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know why, but is there any reasoning behind that?
I'm just thinking about someone who did something meaningful and powerful for our country, you know?
Yeah.
And also that didn't have to be big and elected and whatever,
Right.
you know?
Right.
That's the first thing that popped in my head.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I don't think you can go wrong with Harriet Tubman.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think
no,
so.
I
Yeah.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
say you go wrong with
Yeah.
that. Well, no, that's a great way to start us off here. And we're just, again, thank you to you and your team for joining us. Before we just start off, we just want to find out a little bit more about you. Obviously, we celebrate Black excellence behind the lens, editing, post-production. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and even how you got started here at Nat Geo?
Okay. The long version or the short version?
Oh, you know, we got a little bit of time, so
Okay.
yeah, we want to hear about
Okay,
it.
well, how I got into business was totally by accident, kind of backed into it. I didn't have any training, didn't even really know it existed. I went to college in Indiana at a little liberal arts school and started studying African and African American studies.
Yeah.
And so had a liberal arts background, got out of college, and ended up here in DC with a girlfriend from college, and figured out if I can find work, I'd stay here.
Yeah.
You know, and took my liberal arts thing around and said, oh well, you know, there's all these associations, all these things going on in DC. Maybe I can do some research. I can do something for somebody. And interviewed here, interviewed there, and nothing really was hitting, and I couldn't really find anything. And by chance, there was a research position on a documentary at a little mom and pop production company.
Okay.
And so I landed there and kind of got an idea of what that was, but really was just kind of happy to be making money.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I imagine.
Yeah, and being able to
College
pay
student,
rent,
young,
and,
yeah.
find an apartment with a roommate and all that. But 6 months into that research position, they ended up getting an Avid, and they had an edit room that was ongoing on other projects, and they needed an assistant editor.
Wow.
And so I just kind of, transitioned to that. Didn't really know what it was about. Started logging shots and sitting at somebody's elbow and getting a sense of how all that went. And it was an education, like a real world education,
right.
And I just kind of stuck with it. Started doing work after hours, doing assistant editing, and was making contacts with different editors who were in the edit room, watching what they were doing, seeing how they were interacting with clients, asking them questions.
Right.
And then just started out, we lost a contract at that company and there was like an opportunity to stay on. And I was like, well, I'm already kind of able to make some money doing assistant editing and a little editing on the side.
Yeah.
And so just kind of kept with it, know. And that kind of translated, and I didn't know, I came to DC, didn't know National Geographic was here.
Yeah.
Didn't know Discovery Channel was here,
Right.
PBS, all of these things. I kind of had LA or New York on my radar, but I wasn't thinking about those things. So I kind of ended up working with some of those editors, finishing up projects when other editors would leave, kind of be closer on a documentary, be the last month or 6 weeks and finish up something for the Discovery Channel or and then that, baby steps started to do other jobs and things and got to get full on
Just
jobs.
flows into it. You touched on a few things there that are really intriguing to me because obviously I was born in Washington, D.C., lived in the area pretty much all my life, and I'm in Los Angeles currently. And that's usually what people think of when you're having to go for something like entertainment or working in television. And you talked about something being right here in our backyard, Nat Geo, PBS, Discovery. Like, how was that transition? Was there ever a desire to, obviously you're working here now, but was there ever a desire early on before you even found out about these positions, was there a desire to go to New York? Because you're from Chicago. Was there a desire to go to LA? And even now, Atlanta is picking up. Was there a desire before then?
You know, there really never was. You know, I think like, you know, Chicago, they go by like the second city. You know, I think here in DC, there's a lot of folks in our community who kind of have a little chip on their shoulder compared to New York or LA. There's a lot of talented people who are capable here, but people always talk about those other places as being kind of superior. And I think there's a lot of work that's done here that's really amazing. And sometimes people would say, hey, you did this, oh, you ought to go here, you gotta go there. And for me, I had kind of started a family and put down roots. And, you know, I grew up moving around a lot, although Chicago was my base. And I was kind of very comfortable here. And there was a lot of documentary work to be done, you know, and it was, it felt just kind of rich. And there was, you know, as you began to work one job, then you'd have word of mouth and you'd touch base with something else and something else would hit, and it never felt like, oh, I need to go do that thing. You know, I was always really wanting not to be here, not to be in front of the camera, but to be behind the camera. And so I wasn't attracted to the lights or going somewhere, but more, I like the stories, I like the community, I like the people, you know. And so those places never really had a big pull for me.
Got you. That makes sense. What you're saying is I'm attracted to the lights, right? I got you.
Everybody's got to do what they can do.
I
can't do what you do.
No,
you know,
I
can't do that.
I hear you. No, for sure. Just in that vein, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but we've interviewed so many different people who have had experience in documentary, but then now working in scripted full time or doing all of that. Can you explain a little bit what it's like fully doing documentary? I mean, Emmy nomination for, you know, the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know, Peabody Award, Gracie Allen Award. Like, there's a lot of different things that you've done that may not get the recognition at a certain level. Can you explain the biggest difference for you why you've been more drawn to documentary and now even at Nat Geo doing so much great work?
I think, you know, studying African and African American studies, you know, was a lot of things that were kind of based on books and texts and lectures, fantastic lectures. The woman who was the head of my department, Phyllis Bowens, is from Howard, came out of here and was just a really intellectual heavyweight. And I kind of was attracted to her, you know. She pulled me into that. But she kind of featured, you know, in that department, Eyes on the Prize, you know, was heavily featured, you know. Other documentaries with, you know, Ali Missouri or Basil Davidson, things where you would learn about Africa and the continent and visually, you know. And I didn't think about it as a way to find work, but I just was kind of sucked in a different way than you were off the written page, you know. I think the relationships are kind of the foundation, you know. The way you kind of connect and relate to people, the way once you begin to sit in the edit chair and you watch people sitting in the editor's chair, how they connect to the vision of the producer or director, you know. And, you know, for me, that was kind of fascinating just to see that, you know. I really appreciated being kind of at somebody's shoulder or at somebody's elbow, you know, and just kind of watching and seeing, you know, how they worked, having people who had patience and were generous with discussing what they were doing, why they did this, how this works, you know. But then also seeing them interact with clients, you know, and understanding, you know, you're serving them, you know, you're serving that vision, but you're also in that seat for a reason, you know. People are coming to you for what value you add to their project. And so I just kind of got a sense that, you know, okay, you want to debrief and get a sense of what they're doing, buy into that, and then you become very protective, you know, of that like baby. You know, you're like, okay, I really want to like make sure we can get this to where it needs to go, and it's hard, you know. It's hard, you know. You get every job seems to be kind of different. There's always a negotiation. People work in different ways, you know, where sometimes things are very well prepared and buttoned up and script written, whatever. Sometimes there's nothing and you're figuring it all in the suite. Sometimes a lot of good ways to be a producer, you know. People write, people, you know, interview well. They do a lot of different things, and you don't know what the strengths are and the weaknesses are, but you're kind of there to kind of help and assist. And
sometimes until you even get in it, until you don't find out all that information.
Yeah, and so I mean, what's interesting about it is that you always are learning, you know? And for me, I'm always kind of going through like, I don't know, like the 7 stages of grief or whatever, where I'm like super excited about what the project is and finding out what it is and trying to think and, you know, respond to that and come up with other ideas. And then you hit a wall and you're like, oh, can I even do this? The mountain looks so high, you don't know, you know, that, and then you pick up pieces after that and you kind of, things begin to, you know, what's always so lovely about the process is often the producer has an idea and then you're thinking about how do I make those ideas work? And then in that collaborative process, there's like a third idea, something unanticipated just kind of bubbles up. And that thing is just kind of beautiful and lovely. And sometimes it may not make the final cut, but that unanticipated thing is just kind of interesting to kind of, to be around.
It's like that adrenaline rush that kind of keeps you going. You almost have to stay on your toes when you have that. Like if you don't feel that that excitement or that maybe like that hinge of like nervousness, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well I need to get something else that's gonna really intrigue me and push me again to that point, because that's something almost that gets that creative juice going.
Right.
You know, and again, I'm jumping around a little bit, but one thing I like asking a lot of people that we interview is who was that person that was in front of you that maybe inspired you? Because obviously you went to school, you said a liberal arts school in Indiana, but now you're in DC and like you said, you're looking at different jobs and opportunities, and then you find out about Nat Geo. But how do you find out about Nat Geo? Who was here that you reached out to? Was it as simple as looking online and applying? Because one of the things that we want to do with Post in Black is we're trying to, encourage others and inform other people who are coming behind, some of the youth, high school, whether it be college. We're trying to reach out to a lot of HBCUs, and we just want to like give them, wisdom and insight about the path to take. Your path is different from the past, but who was there for you like a mentor, and what were some of the steps that you took, and what are some steps people can take now to possibly get an opportunity in this industry, in this field?
My immediate contacts were the initial editors that I worked with, they were documentary editors, people who are experienced. First editor I worked with was a guy named Gary Westphalen. There was also Cliff Hackle and Mickey Green. All of them were very experienced editors. Some of them had their own businesses. Gary was a shooter as well and produced. And so they had different insight on the process and ways they tapped in. And they were able to kind of give me advice or actually provide me with work after hours, So, and I think, there's a certain amount of thing everybody can put in time and everybody can put work and, and like I had to learn, moving from research to the edit room that it was different, at researching I was, this was really kind of before really the internet was really the thing, but
So you were diving deep into
you're
books,
diving into
library,
things, you're going to library conference, you're calling people on the phone and you're faxing things, you're doing things, but then you're checking out, at 5 or whatever, you walk by the edit room and you're like, okay, bye, And so when I transitioned to the edit room, I was like, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm leaving, and then I had to be told, hey, with the editors there, you need to be, you need to be there. You need to, is the editor hungry? Is the editor thirsty? Is the editor this? It's like, but then you stay and there's that time of building relationships. And I think when you're with people who are generous, it's helpful. I think kind of as I started to find work, I kind of was always looking for, people that I was connecting with. Here in addition to PBS and Discovery and National Geographic, we have Howard University. And so I did a couple of thesis films for students there, and who became friends. I had a mentor, Jackie Jones, who I worked with, who was the head of Black Public Media, and she's the one who was kind of the creative force behind that. 180 Days, a year inside an American high school project, which ended up winning a Peabody. But I don't know. I never really kind of went into a project thinking, what are we going to win? What are we going to? But when I sat down in the interview and I started talking to her, it was a very modest wing on on the campus. It was a little busted up. But I just was like. I was kind of arrested. I took, immediate attention and just, kind of did a little research, found out who she was, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like she'd done amazing, profound things. And this project was, you know, it was the first real project that I worked on where the edit was ongoing with the shoot. They shot at a high school, which really was like just catty corner across the street from Howard. And we edited, you know, at the same time, but the crew was made up of, you know, a lot of people who were established and a lot of people who were, and other people who were interning from Howard, you know. People,
gotcha.
and people kind of all slotted in at different levels on this project. And when we had our production meetings, talking about the story, talking about what was going to be shot, because we had 3-4 crews shooting all the time over there, you know. It was just, I just kind of looked at it and I thought, oh, this is different. You know, it was like, there was an obvious kind of an inherent hierarchy in that kind of situation, but when we had a discussion, the floor was open. Anybody could talk. It didn't matter if it was Jackie, it didn't matter if it was me or the other editor, Carol Slatkin, who was really fantastic and I learned a lot from, or the producers, you know, or the interns, or the APs, you know, everybody had an ability to say, this is where I think the story can go.
Input,
you know?
everywhere.
And it was like, it was just, the approach to the thing was very inclusive. And it was like, I saw that and I was like, oh, I like this.
You like that,
you know, and it's like, that really appealed to me. You know, that kind of like, you know, and I was like, okay, that's who I want to be, you know, in a place where it's like, you respect everybody's input. And you know, like, just because somebody's working at a certain level on a production doesn't reflect everything that they've done and everything that they will do and what they might contribute. And I was just like, okay, I just want to be doing this, you know?
I like what you just said there, and it kind of ties into a question I was going to ask you about, because we have a lot of, you know, the editing world, post-production, it's almost like freelance for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, you get one job and then it's like, okay, till the next job, and then the relationships and one job to the next. And now you're more in-house, obviously, with that. Can you explain, you know, some of the things that you know, not getting you in trouble or anything, but like some of the things you really enjoyed about freelance and some of the things that you see that are different, obviously being locked into one place.
Okay. It seems like most of the work is freelance work in this market. And so I've mostly done freelance work, but also done work on staff in the past. Did a lot of freelance work here at Geographic over the years. And so usually when I got hired, you know, for a staff position was after I was freelancing there for a while. And someone would say, okay, he's doing this, he can handle this, we could hire them, you know? And so it just kind of traded on that kind of relationship. When I was freelancing here at Geographic initially, there was a big pool of assistant editors who were working and supporting, you know, maybe 20 rooms, bunches of editors. And at that time, and this is like, you know, 25 years ago. My heart just went out to those folks. I see them walking down the hall and it just felt like we were grinding them down, you know? It felt like they were supporting so many people, carrying so much weight, you know, just making sure the avids were running well, you know, making sure all the media was right, that the drives were well, you know, being in a sense that it was hard for them to put on their creative hat, you know? And I would have several conversations with them and I would talk about it, whatever, and my advice to them was always, get out, you know?
Why is that?
My advice was, well, you're being worked in a way here, and what you want to do is cut. And you're not getting the chance to cut. That's right. And so there were occasional times where we were able, and I know other editors were doing that here too, where you would work with an assistant editor and you would be able to give them a scene. And they would work on it, you know, and you'd get to a screening and someone would say, oh, I like that scene. And I would say, well, I didn't cut that scene, you know? They cut this scene, you know, and it's a way to kind of promote them and elevate them and just kind of acknowledge the capacity that they have. But at that time, I didn't really feel like that opportunity was there. For me personally, coming back to Geographic, you know, I felt like coming on staff was kind of it was an interesting time to be coming on staff, just because I felt, you know, it was odd in terms of the whole pandemic and things being locked down and people being offsite. But Geographic has always had this mission of doing really fantastic quality work, you know, and been very mission oriented. But then with all of the, you know, activism that we had over the past couple of years, you know, there was a new energy to really have new storytellers and new stories and new perspectives reflected in our work, and new bodies and new people on our staff. And so I was just thinking, oh, I want to be a part of that. You know, it's like if I can be helpful at all with any type of mentoring, you know, I'm seeking to be mentored also.
Right,
you know?
right.
You know, it's like we're all kind of learning, and we're all, you know, and so I kind of feel like it was kind of like a really opportune time to be here, and I just kind of jumped at it when the opportunity came. You know.
No, that ties into so much. You know, over the last year, you know, years, as you said, but like DEI is, you know, a new space that you hear more often than not. Right. There's so much, you know, inclusion, so many conversations happening, and as we try to expose, specifically everybody to the world of post-production, but then highlighting people like yourself, Black man working at Nat Geo, who before, like, we would not know about this. How do people even find out about these positions? How can we, you know, I guess, educate more about post-production to our community, you know, to people in general, to show, you know, to actually make sure that the people that we're trying to educate are qualified for positions. Because it's one thing to tell them about it, but it's another thing. It's like, okay, well, here's the opportunity. They don't have the resume or the credentials or anything to get in there. What are the steps that we need to take in order to increase that awareness and that education and that knowledge and the capability, you know, in the industry for young, you know, young men and women of color, you know? Because it's really, that's the initiative, you know. Obviously, I say it every time we do it. You guys that are watching, you see it every time that I talk about it on Post and Black. But that's the reason why my brother Daniel started it. It's because he was working and didn't see anybody like him. And obviously, we meet you. Showing up today, we meet somebody else who's working here as an assistant editor. We're like, there's more. You know, how do we do that?
Yeah, and I really appreciate the work that you all are doing, because. You know, not only do we work behind the camera, but we work in the dark, you know, and it is kind of isolated work, you know, and it's in just looking at kind of the things people you featured, you know, it's a revelation, you know, unless you're really actively working and trying to go, well, these things kind of, they don't jump at you.
Well, most of the people we interviewed, they always said they're learning about other editors of color too. And again, some of my brother's mentors have been from all backgrounds, but obviously he was just highlighting specifically people that look like him. He's like, I don't see anybody like this. And then to find out there's more. So that's what we're trying to see. How do we, what do we need to do to educate people?
Well, I mean, I think that what you're doing is kind of like, is part of the conversation. You know, it's kind of, it's opening people's eyes, because I think one of the kind of well-worn excuses really in a lot of American professional life is, I can't find anybody. You know, I don't, you know, I just couldn't find a qualified person, you know, and that might be true, you know, if you zoom in so close and you don't open up your lens and see where everybody is, you know, and even just what we just discussed, we might not always be aware.
Exactly.
But this kind of education that you're doing is part of it, you know, hiring people, you know, having, just like you said, the DEI space, having executives, people represented in the executive level who are serious about this, having people in management and senior levels who are serious about this, getting people all throughout that kind of, all stages of employment, you know, in the shoot, because then you say, oh, well, they do exist. They are here because, and I think it's something that requires kind of continual maintenance. You know, just in my time here, you know, we've had positions come available and different things. And I'm always kind of like going and, you know, shaking different trees, talking to people I know and say, hey, who do we know? Who do we know? Who's here? Who might be? And just get them in the conversation, have them be someone who can have them submit a resume. Maybe they can sit down for an interview. And just kind of trying to encourage people to know that, you know, we do exist, you know, and we're here, and we're capable, you know. And I think it's got to be on all of those kind of fronts, you know. And the weight that you all are pulling, I think, is really, you know, everyone can watch this. You know? Everyone can watch this and know, that they did this. Oh, they were there.
Exactly.
Oh, you know, there's a lot of tremendous capacity.
There's a lot there. Even touching on something before I go to another route, in terms of like the type of I guess background and experience that you've had, cutting now is a lot of different programming. We've met with people like Avid and Adobe. What equipment do you use? Are you efficient in both? What do you encourage somebody who's just starting out in editing to maybe tap into and learn, or is there? It's to each his own. We've heard varied responses, but for yourself, what would you say?
We are exclusively kind of Adobe house here.
All right, gotcha.
And for most of the freelance work that I've done, we're really doing a lot of Adobe Premiere work. But there's a lot of different workflows out there. There's a lot of people who do different things. I've done a few frontline for PBS, and their finishing is all done on Avid. And whether or not I was in somebody's edit suite or during COVID working remotely, we were working on Avids, But everything is kind of software based. And my opinion really is, if you're young and you're coming in, get something accessible and just start cutting, because they're two different bicycles. And when you're riding a bicycle, you know how to ride it. You're not going to forget.
Right.
And there's going to be different keystrokes, and maybe you get shortcuts and you hit this key and whatever, and maybe you make a couple mistakes. You slap your hand, you just undo, you do it. So I feel like, get cutting, work, do this, do that, work on something small, work on something personal. Just use those muscles,
That is quotable. Yeah. That's probably going to be something that we share. You're just like riding a bicycle. You're not going to forget about it. That's right. You've done this before. Can you talk about what has been your favorite project to work on here at Nat Geo? Because growing up, my mom had me in those reading programs where I had to read, books during the summer. I was watching the hyenas and the cheetahs on Nat Geo, watching all this stuff when I was growing up, just captivated by everything. Yeah. There's a trailer that I saw with a program that Will Smith is doing. There's so many different things that Nat Geo has to offer, but you've been here for a while. You have, teeth in the game, as I say. What has been one of your favorite projects to work on here?
There's a big climate conference in Scotland, in Glasgow, COP26. They're going to have a big concert with the Royal Orchestra there, and there's going to be different activists and politicians and young folks there. And this symphony orchestra will play, and there'll be footage from NASA, and maybe a message from people up on the International Space Station. But they also wanted to feature National Geographic and footage that we've produced over the years on climate change, and particularly at the poles and glaciers melting and what that means for our climate. This project was interesting. I hadn't done anything like this quite before, which was for a live event, but without any narration or whatever. It's just to accompany the orchestra. And so we had a piece of music, and then we had to kind of just map it out to the drama and the flow of the music. And I worked with Madeline Turini and Kylie Pinar here, and we just had to kind of figure out how to make that work. And it was kind of very loose, and it wasn't as directed. It had kind of an orientation and a mission, but it was like, okay, there's a big hit here. Okay, this is where the glacier falls. Okay, that's what it calls. Okay, but this is where. Okay, we're gonna see a polar bear here. We're gonna see penguins here. But it was kind of like listening to the music first. It was really the music drove everything. Because it really was going to be presented, to accompany the orchestra. And so that was kind of an interesting thing.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I like that. I know people want to keep in touch with you and probably stay connected with you. Are you on social media? Where can people stay up to date with what's going on with you? Follow you, Twitter, Instagram, all that. Are you on those socials?
Yeah. That's a muscle I need to work. I'm not real good on that.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. We'll find something for them to keep in touch. They can follow Nat Geo. Make sure you stay in touch with everything. But Adam, thank you so much for your time today. This is amazing, the way you finished it. There's so much wisdom, so much insight. We're going to stay connected and definitely keep in touch with what's going on for you in the future. For all of you, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Post in Black. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels at Made for More Entertainment and Post in Black, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you do not miss another episode. We'll see you next week, and this is a way to kick off season 3 of Post in Black. See you next week.